Hey, it's me, Magicat, and as everyone knows, I'm probably the best and most talented player on YouTube. But some bosses can actually pose a threat to even me. And those are the bosses that I'll be talking about today. The top 15 most toughest sons of bitches from a wide variety of games, but, well, mostly the ones I've been talking about on this channel. Also, since lots of games have different difficulty settings, I'm only going to count the normal mode for each game, unless there's a hard mode in which the fights are actually notably different instead of just having buffed HP and damage. So let's begin. Number 15, Jimmy on Expert in Cuphead. For people that discovered this channel through Cuphead videos, you'd probably be surprised to see Expert Jimmy this low. Well, maybe after the years of pain and suffering at the hands of the genie, I've just toughened up, because I no longer find him that hard. There was something about the final phase that always threw me off, and that was the main difficulty for me. But I guess something just clicked for me at last, and now it's not really that bad. But that still doesn't erase the journey up to that point, which includes taking a gamble at the start to decide which torture machine you'll get pegged with. You better pray it's not the treasure. The pillars aren't too bad, but you can sometimes get unlucky and lose a life, which you'll need for the next phase, which is the puppet, because the coffin isn't a phase, it's a joke. But the puppet can get overwhelming with how much you have to dodge at once. But that too has gotten easier for me, and I just replayed the game after another year or so of hiatus, so it's not like I had lots of recent practice. But I'll still have to give Jimmy the number 15 spot for the past nightmares I had. Number 14, Sister Frida from Dark Souls 3. Frida has never really kicked my dick much. She's always been hard, but never a boss I got stuck on. But the fact that she remains a threat to this day after I've done the fight probably like hundreds of times, that is something worth noting. And it's one of my favorite bosses like ever, and usually my favorite fights I do so much that I get really good at them. Frida, not so much. Even phase 1 can throw me off. Sometimes she takes way longer than I expect to land the hit after starting the attack animation, and the range is kinda deceptive. Next phase is sometimes a complete joke and other times a bit of a mess. If Frida and her big daddy manage to corner you or attack you at the same time, it can eat away your Estus, which you'll probably want for the final part, where she has an incredibly wide range of attacks. She can turn invisible, send icicles at you, throw slow homing projectiles, which contrast with how fast she can be with her scythe at close range. It's a tough crack to nut. Number 13, Pure Vessel from Hollow Knight. It's hard to explain what made Pure Vessel so hard for me the first time I fought him, considering he starts out with just 4 attacks, and after a couple of phases he'll end up with a whopping total of 6. You'd think it would be easy to just remember how to deal with each of them, but for some reason it's not always the case. And he puts lots of pressure on you. Usually when you jump over an attack he does, you'll barely have time to land back on the ground before he's already doing another one. And like most hard Hollow Knight bosses, he does double damage, so the fight can turn from a flawless run to just dead in a matter of seconds. Healing is also kind of a gamble. The best time to do it is when he summons little explosions around him. Sometimes you can get a couple heals off without being hit, but sometimes those explosions will just spawn right on you. So I usually just don't bother with healing and try to kill him before he kills me. These days I'm most of the time successful, but that definitely wasn't always the case. Number 12, Date Masamune from Nioh. Like Jimmy the Great, Masamune earns his spot here for horrors of the past, not present as much. Since getting better at Nioh, I've learned how to deal with this guy's bullshit, but I cannot forget how much this motherfucker used to piss me off. First of all, he hits like a truck, and he's a filthy spammer, and he has massive range. Combine those 3 and you get a dead Magicat. On top of that, as the fight progresses, he'll use 2 different buffs on him. One of them just makes him spammier and gives him even more range, whereas the other one gives his melee attacks projectiles. I used to just run around the arena until he ran out of stamina or ki and had to quit spamming those projectiles, but since then I've learned to take advantage of a few of his openings, which he doesn't have many of. His stamina is his biggest weakness for sure. Without that he'd be a complete overpowered monster and would definitely be higher up on this list. Number 11, Inner Bosses from Sekiro. So this is 3 already challenging bosses of the base game, but turned into absolute monsters with just a few changes. If you swap the main game bosses with these guys, I think the number of people that beat the game would have been cut in half. At least. But since they were added much later in an update, I was already familiar with their movesets, which is why they're not ranking any higher than this. That's not to say the additions didn't throw me off, they did for sure. I had to readjust completely differently to Owl Father, who can now just disappear when you try to hit him and quickly reappear with an incoming attack. Not to mention his Mistraven combos in phase 2. And with Ishin, his first phase in particular works really weird now. His AI is just a lot more unpredictable. But Genichiro is the one who threw me off the most. I found him somewhat easy before, but now he has this uninterruptible combo that will damage you even if you're blocking. Only perfect timing with your deflections can save you. And then of course when he starts using lightning, he has a dirty trick up his sleeve there too. You can redirect the lightning back on him, and before it would always instantly stun him. This time he redirects the redirected lightning back on you, so you gotta redirect the you know what I mean. These guys are tough. Number 10, Maria from Nioh. Maria is deceptively challenging for just being a chick in a basement with a sword. She's one of the fastest bosses in Nioh, which says a lot, does as much damage as any monster 10 times her size, and you're in as much danger right up in her face as you are on the other side of the room. A single hit from her sword does about half of my health, and she has lots of really fast multiple hit combos. So that's bad news for me. At first, she does have a weakness though, which is that she staggers when you hit her, like any other humanoid enemy would in this game. She also tries to block you, which you can use against her to deplete her of ki fast. But then she quickly fixes that problem by buffing herself to become immune to stagger, and she no longer blocks you, she just face tanks everything. If you're a Souls player, let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're playing Dark Souls 1 and you're fighting someone in full Havel or Havel armor, however you say it, but they have full mobility and they're using Sellsword Twin Blades from Dark Souls 3. Yeah, imagine that. If you're not a Souls player and you have no idea what that means, let me make it simple. She's fucking hard. Number 9, Dr. Karl's robot on Expert from Cuphead. If I were to make a ranking of which bosses I found the hardest on my first playthrough, Dr. Karl's robot would be near the very top. At first it was just because the screen was so full of shit happening that I couldn't process it all. He has 3 weapons which you can destroy in any order you want, but destroying them just makes him replace them with another weapon, so you'll probably spend a long time trying to figure out in which order you should do it. But the reason the robot belongs on this list for me is the final phase. I'm sure for some people it's the easiest part of the fight. If you're experienced with bullet hells, it's probably right up your alley. But for me, I suck at it. Not only do I get quickly disoriented, but the foreground sometimes blocks your vision. And there's also moving walls that do 2 things. 1, they make dodging the projectiles more difficult since it limits how much space you have. 2, they shield the boss from your attacks. And I try to prioritize on survival over doing damage, so this can really drag sometimes. By the end of it, I usually have a bit of sweat on my hands. Number 8, Nightmare King Grimm from Hollow Knight. Like Pure Vessel, NKG has a limited moveset and is still, for some reason, such a difficult encounter. His health is higher than most other bosses, made worse by how he's never passively around in the arena, but rather he's only vulnerable while he's attacking. He's also a modified version of the original Grimm, so it's gonna take a while to adjust to how differently he plays now. He also does double damage, because why not? And whenever you hit a certain threshold in his health, he'll go blowfish on you, which you'll be lucky to survive without taking a single hit. I've known many friends that played Hollow Knight up to Nightmare King Grimm and then never went further. I myself was stuck for well over an hour, and at first it did seem impossible. But I'm Magicat, I make the impossible possible. Number 7, Tate Eboshi from Nioh 2. Tate Eboshi is one of those types of bosses that I didn't love on my first playthrough simply because she humiliated me so much, and I have old footage from my PS4 to prove that. Her moves seem readable and clear enough, but they're still difficult to adapt to. Her scythe attacks have long and wide range, and this game is much less forgiving with iframes than, say, Souls games. Not only that, but they do a lot of damage. And they can stagger you and make it impossible to dodge the next attack, which might just be the attack that kills you. And in her second phase, she'll sometimes follow up a number of her moves with a sudden jump attack that covers a lot of ground. You'll need to always remember that she can do that, and always be ready to get out of dodge. She also has a couple attacks that share the same startup animation, so you need to be prepared for both and make a split-second decision based on which one she's going with. If I didn't love this boss so much, I probably would never have learned to get good at it. Number 6, DLC Shuten Doji from Nioh 2. This is a reworked boss from the base game of Nioh 2, which is a moderately hard boss at best. Then they gave him like triple the health, triple the damage, a couple new attacks and sped him up. And now they've created a monstrosity. One thing that always makes me play aggressively and make stupid mistakes is how his weak spot works. Sometimes the bottle he's carrying will crystallize and he'll soon take a drink from it. If successful, he'll transition into phase 2. Which is where he's a lot more dangerous. So you're gonna want to hit the bottle and destroy the crystals and keep him in phase 1 for as long as possible. But it's in a pretty awkward spot to hit, especially with how much it moves around. So sometimes I just focus too much on the bottle and forget the boss is still there, trying to murder me. In phase 2 then, he's flailing around intoxicated. This makes his moves hard to read. Sometimes I'm just not sure if his combo is over or if he's going for another attack. Wrong judgment can lead to a quick death. You also have this NPC fighting along with you, but she really doesn't help. If anything, it makes it worse since they gave Shuten Doji more health to make it more balanced. But sometimes she gets knocked out and you'll have to revive her, and I don't think the boss is just gonna give you a moment of reprieve to do that. Number 5, Demon of Hatred from Sekiro. I know many people will say, he's not that hard, he just has a lot of health but a fairly simple moveset, Sword State Ishin is way harder. Yeah, but that health counts for something when he has this much of it. Especially because he can sometimes be inconsistent with both his AI and his pathing. In such a long fight, there's plenty of time for one thing to go wrong and completely screw you over. Spacing is everything in this fight, and it can get awkward at times. Demon of Hatred also has some really weird rules that don't apply to the rest of the game. He plays more like a Dark Souls boss than a Sekiro boss. You're not just deflecting his attacks, but you're running away, chasing him, and dodging attacks. Far more so than deflecting. And dodging isn't as reliable in this game as it is in Souls. By far the attack I struggle with the most is the one he gains in the second phase. The slam attack that sends a massive wave of fire. The best way to dodge it is to just jump over it, but the timing of it really depends on the distance, and I'm just shit at properly estimating it. And another side effect of a boss having tons of health is that it makes me subconsciously overly aggressive. I'll take every opportunity to get some hits in and only get out of danger at the very last second, but sometimes that can screw me over. I believe there's only one FromSoft boss that exceeds Demon of Hatred in difficulty. And that's number 4, Orphan of Kos from Bloodborne. Or some say Kosum. Making this boss's health go from 100% to 0% isn't really the biggest accomplishment in the world, but to be able to do it consistently is. Orphan is another one of my favorite bosses ever, and it doesn't matter how many times I do it, he still kicks my ass. He has such a painful mixture of super quick close range attacks and slower wide reaching abilities. His weapon, which is a placenta because Japan, works in a really weird way. He can kinda use it as a yo-yo to extend its range, and with some attacks it can hit you even if you're behind him. On top of that, his slower attacks usually drag it along the ground, so even after dodging in the initial hit, you might still get hurt. And his second form can go from calm and easy time to oh my fucking god, run for your life. If he's just spamming the attack where he jumps in the air and tosses placenta juice, yummy, it's easy. You can just wait under him and go for a backstab, but most of the time you won't get to abuse his asshole for long. And when he starts rampaging around with his placenta that he's now using with both hands, you better be afraid. Again, lots of very quick attacks mixed in with slower ones. And the range also varies a lot. Basically, you just need to learn all of it to be able to do it smoothly, and I never have, and I probably never will. Number 3, Valkyrie Queen Sigrun from God of War. Sigrun was tough to rank because on one hand she's just a modified version of 8 other bosses, so you'll surely have lots of practice before her. But on the other hand she's a combination of 8 fucking bosses, so in a vacuum she's insanely difficult. But also on one foot she doesn't have any new attacks that the other 8 Valkyries don't have as far as I can recall. But on the other foot her health makes Demon of Hatred look puny. But then again on one... I'm running out of limbs. On one dick, I did beat her first try when I played the game all those years ago, but on the other dick, it took me hours to be able to do it again now when I reloaded an old save. So I'll just have her near the top, but not quite. Because objectively, she is a nightmarishly difficult boss. It's just that the practice you get with her underlings makes you more prepared. But it just makes you better, it doesn't make the boss any different. As for her moveset, it's very varied. Some of her attacks you have to block, some you have to parry, some you have to dodge, some you have to interrupt, and with some you just need to create some distance. There are more different reactions required out of you for this boss than really any other boss I can think of. For that, she's earned the number 3 spot. Number 2, Absolute Radiance from Hollow Knight. If you fought this boss, you knew she would be top 3. This disgusting, sunlight shooting, motherfucker is tougher than all other Hollow Knight bosses put together. She's yet another remake of an existing boss, which has been kind of a trend in this video, but her and the original Radiance are so different that it just feels like the old version is on slow motion. In her first phase, she's tough but manageable because, hey, at least you have a platform to stand on. Sure, sometimes it gets covered in spikes and it can combo really badly with her other abilities, but it's a cakewalk in comparison to what comes next. When all you have is these tiny little blocks and she's teleporting around, still sending projectiles of all sorts at you, it's a different game. Partially a game of luck, since sometimes she's nice enough to always teleport near you, and other times she's all the fucking way out in Belize. But mostly it's a game of Pain Olympics. Trying to frantically chase after her while dodging attacks and trying to stay on platforms is beyond hectic, and if you fall down, you lose a life. And if you get hit by something and then fall down, then ouch! That's 3 lives lost in a single hit. And the pain's not over yet. She teleports far above you in the sky and you gotta climb up there while she's sniping you with lasers. It's not that bad, but I usually get hit like once before I get there. After getting there, you're greeted with an intense finale. You only have 2 tiny platforms and she's sending homing bolts at you non-stop until she's dead. It used to be a huge headache until I learned you can just pogo on her head and they won't be able to reach you. Regardless, it's overall the kind of fight you'll have shaky hands after. Every damn time. And the winner of the Pain Olympics is anyone who subjects themselves to the torture of Sanada Yukimura, the #1 hardest boss from Nioh. He does half my health every hit, if I'm lucky. If not, it's a one-shot. He's also faster than Maria, who, even for Nioh standards, is fucking Sonic. He also has 0 downtime. Most of the time you won't be able to punish his combos unless you have a very fast weapon. And lucky for me, I'm using an Odachi, one of the slowest weapons. He's also a spear user, so he's got all the range in the world. He starts out using fire too, which can quickly light you ablaze and chip away your health periodically. Oh, and just as an added bonus, he can destroy your guard in a single hit, which leaves you vulnerable for a very long time. Then he's got 2 different phases he can switch between. One is just the fire again, but even more fiery, and the other one is this whatever wind shit. It's a bit easier to take advantage of, but there's a big problem. He has 2 different fly and slam down attacks that cover a massive area and do a shit ton of damage, even if you're blocking. Honestly, the only way I can beat this boss is by abusing the stairs. This way you can trick him into doing the area of effect slams on the platform above you and you'll be completely safe below him. It also helps with kiting him around in the other phases. You may have also noticed that his health is quite low. It should tell you how hard the boss's moveset is when he's still #1 despite how quickly he can be killed. It's like a game of extreme Russian roulette where there's 5 out of 6 bullets. If you win, it's over quickly, but most likely you won't and you just die quickly. It's definitely the hardest boss I've ever fought and I hope it stays that way. And that's about it for this video. I'm back after yet another hiatus, but this time I might not get back to hiatusing right after I've uploaded this one, because I've got some special plans in mind, not to mention Elden Ring is coming out soon and I believe Cuphead DLC is on the horizon as well, so we've got some fun times ahead. Anyway, I'll see you next time, probably soon.